spending a lot more money on education, giving more money to towns. What else can we do? What else can the legislature do to improve the quality of education in the cities?
Well, I mean, I think there are a lot of things that we can do. We need to improve the ratios of teachers to students. We need to improve the plans. There are school buildings in this state that are falling down, and we've got dollars in this budget for deferred maintenance and repairs. We need to get a lot more best practices into schools that really aren't performing as well as they could, and we've got a number of different bills to try and move that agenda forward, to try and make sure that if we have schools in certain settings that are performing really well, and we have other ones next door that aren't, that we're figuring out what pedagogical tools are being used in the successful schools, and we're transplanting them into the ones that aren't. So it's about a lot more than money. I give the governor credit. She talked about accountability in her address. She has some accountability measures in her budget. We're working to strengthen those.
I have one more. There's a lot of money for special education. And every school is required to have special education for those who aren't, not meeting the level. But there's not a requirement that each school has something for kids who are above average, excellent. I have one child who's one way and one child who's another way. The child who's slow is to help the child who is way advanced. There's nothing special. There's nothing required by the state for there to be programs for kids who are, who really are way Zoom. And I was hoping that maybe you could put something in the budget for that.
Well, I hear what you're talking about. It's a shame. I mean, the truth is we had dollars in state budgets for the gifted and talented all the way up until 1991 when the budget crisis came and the dollars were pulled out. And to me, it doesn't make sense. No Child Left Behind has shifted the entire focus to children who are lagging and taken the spotlight away from the gifted and talented who also need their supports. We're working to get dollars into this budget for programs for the gifted and talented. They were not included in the governor's budget. I'm optimistic that the Democratic budget will include some dollars for the gifted and talented.
Andy, I mean, what good is educating everybody if they move out of state when we're done because they can't afford a house? Are you guys considering anything with education funding to encourage, towns to do affordable housing, cluster housing, new housing starts? I mean, everybody wants to build the mansions, but nobody wants to do the starter homes because of the education funding.
Well, there's a great proposal that's out there called Home Connecticut that would address a lot of the affordable housing crunch. It's a big proposal stretched out over many years that would go ahead and increase affordable housing and also help recompense communities for potentially increased educational costs that they'll have with young families coming in. So I think it's a great proposal. The governor has really been somewhat silent on it to date, so far as I know, and I think Democrats are much more receptive to it. I don't know if we'll get it this year, but I think that we're headed that direction.
Questions.
Yes.
I grew up in Stanford, but I was a teacher in Virginia for 9 years before I came up here, and I taught in Norwalk Public Schools last year, and frankly, I was appalled by how far behind Connecticut is compared with other states in terms of technology literacy and infusion of technology into the curriculum. I mean, we were literally a decade behind where other states where I've worked with. Because after I taught, I worked for a company called Blackboard that provides a platform for K-12, for online education for the K-12 and colleges and universities. And so 2 questions. One, is there any discussion at all about a statewide virtual school that would be a network for say, the smaller towns in Connecticut that would love to offer something like AP Latin, but they only have 6 kids that would ever take it, so they can't possibly afford a person who would be qualified to teach that. So if you have a statewide virtual school, you allow that sort of sharing of teacher resources across districts. So that's one question. And then the other is, you were talking about pedagogical tools and making those more available. And that's another thing where our state just completely lags behind it is the idea of curriculum sharing from district to district. The districts here in Connecticut are just, they're all in their own silos, doing their own thing, reinventing the wheel, not sharing things. So you've got a teacher in one district who's, spending 60 hours creating curriculum around a particular novel or something like that, which is being taught across the state, but none of that information is being shared. So it's an incredible amount of wasted resources through duplicative work in that way. So So are there any discussions about things like that? But I guess the bigger question is, who would advocate for that? Like, is it that our teachers' unions are kind of weak in terms of pushing forward that sort of focus on instruction? Is it because there isn't advocacy across the school boards that are looking for working together, and so the school boards aren't really lobbying for that sort of money? Or, like, I'm just wondering what's missing that things like that are not moving forward in such a rich state?
All right, so I kind of picked up 3 questions in there. So let me start with the first. Virtual instruction. Yes, we are looking to get some real momentum going on virtual instruction. In this, the Democratic budget that's coming, I'm hopeful that for each year in the coming biennium, we have significant funds there to set up a whole virtual instruction network for the entire state of Connecticut. There are a lot of districts that currently can access virtual instruction through their local regional education system, but I'd like to also have something statewide. So we've got dollars out of surplus that I'm trying to put into this budget. I'm hopeful that the approach chairs will also support that, and that we will have those dollars there. And 2 years from now, there would be something available for every child in Connecticut who wanted virtual instruction, whether it's AP or holding on to a credit where they were struggling with a class and maybe going to lose the credit. Now they could get the additional instruction needed. So that's 1. 2, a center for sharing of best practices. Like you, for me, this has been a key issue. It just doesn't make sense. It's just not logical that we haven't got more sharing going on. So there have been some programs that have happened through the Vanguard Schools program. Now what's being proposed this year is that the University of Connecticut NEAG School gets additional funding to allow them to not only be focused on best practices, but having field experts who can get out there, master teachers, to schools around the state, particularly schools that are prepared to go ahead and waive their collective bargaining agreements and go with slim contracts and go for longer school days, longer school years, and then import best practices. So that proposal is out there, and it brings me to your third question, which is, advocacy. The CEA and the AFT, the 2 largest teachers unions in the state of Connecticut, they're behind this proposal. They're for it. I haven't heard many people speak in opposition to it. The biggest challenge we have is it's costly. It's quite a bit of money to go ahead and build this center and make sure you have the staff needed to get those best practices out there. So I'm going to be fighting for those dollars and trying to make sure that we can get it off the ground. It's way overdue. I've been at the Education Committee for 3 years now. I'm not sure why this didn't happen 15, 20 years ago. I'm certainly committed to trying to get this rolled out as quickly as possible.
We've done a very good job in higher ed. I've served on a subcommittee, and the growth in distance learning and professional development in online has grown exponentially over the last 7-8 years. Can we move on to healthcare?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate your coming up to the Capitol. I really appreciate everything you guys have done online. I was saying to Connecticut Bob that you have a lot of fans out there who you don't know about, and we appreciate the way that you're passionate about your views, and you put together the videos and the blogs that drive home the points, often with great humor. So just know that you have a lot more fans out there than you realize, and I certainly count myself among them.